to Straight No Chaser. This is episode 23. We have a guest on as well this week, Kenny. Kenny goes to Fairfield, and he. What year are you in, Kenny?
Junior.
You're a junior? All right, so we're going to
Yeah.
start off with the interview. Alex, if you wanted to lead us off, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, so Kenny, thank you for coming on the show. So for all of you who don't know Kenny, he's from Philadelphia. Like Jake said, he's a finance major at Fairfield. He is very involved in politics as well. He likes to talk about politics. He actually has his own podcast that he hosts. It's called Gen Z Patriots. And it's basically a podcast where he talks about basically he gives his opinion on U.S. politics, and I think you sometimes cover foreign issues as well on there. So, yeah, but basically today in the interview, we're going to kind of talk to him about his opinion on the current state of the country and kind of the future of partisan politics in the United States and kind of where he thinks it's going. So, to start off, of course, a big kind of trigger of all these after effects that we're seeing right now in our politics was the recent election when Joe Biden was voted as the 46th president. So, now, of course, Biden, he assumed office in January, but the impeachment trial of Donald Trump is still something that's been ongoing now for the past couple months until recently when the Senate acquitted Trump again. So the Senate on Saturday acquitted former President Donald Trump on an impeachment charge which incited an insurrection, and the acquittal comes more than a month of a mob of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol as lawmakers were counting electoral results that certified Trump's loss. So what I want to ask you, Kenny, is basically what's your opinion on the outcome of the election, and what's your opinion on Joe Biden as his potential as a new president and the whole events that happened on the Capitol as the result of the election?
All right, so 3 parts. So the election, this was the first election in American history where you're watching the election on live TV and you see a vote tabulation decrease on national television. There goes a light bulb. You start looking into the states and you see all these laws that were changed in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. These states changed their laws. Not with the state legislature. They use the governors and the Secretary of State would use executive orders and whatever else. In Pennsylvania, I know it went to the Supreme Court, corrupt Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania. It's undisputed. It's, I think, 9 far left liberals on there. Sided with the governor. The Constitution of the United States does not allow the governor to unilaterally create election laws. That is a power given to the state legislatures. So there's some questions there. There's an entire, I'm not going to talk about it too much. I think this election had a lot of question marks, but, Joe Biden was sworn in on the 20th. That's that. We got 4 years of Joe Biden. If people are still interested, November 3rd is how I view it is a wound that will not heal, except for, he's already sworn in. On to the future, but if you want to look back, you can go to peternavarro.com. There's a Navarro report there. Yeah, he's a partisan guy. He worked for Trump, but these all the numbers and stuff. He's got the bibliography or whatever, works cited and all that, and the numbers come straight from the state websites and whatnot, what they were allowed to have access to. Then you talk about the actions on the 6th. My thing with that is they've turned it into all Trump supporters are domestic terrorists. I agree. Everybody who stormed the Capitol building or went into the Capitol should be tried and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Just like I would have said for anybody on the left that would have done it. Now, that being said, the Capitol, I think it was a lot of idiots that did it. Okay, typically, yes, you can go. It's a public building, whatever you want to say. On that day, everybody should have known stay out of the Capitol building. And then obviously the chambers. Why on earth would you go in there? Now, there are still a lot of questions. Investigations need to happen. Who knew of the threat prior? I believe the House and the Senate were both briefed the day before on it. Why was there not more security, Capitol Hill police there? That's a question for Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. They're the ones who deploy them. But I mean, other than that, but I don't think you can project that on the other million people that were there. And I think to say Donald Trump incited that in his speech on the 6th, which was what the articles of impeachment said. He was mid-speech when the Washington Post reports that the Capitol was breached. To have gotten from where he did the speech at the Ellipse to the Capitol building, to breach it when it was breached, you would have had to leave Donald Trump's speech 5 minutes prior to it starting. Not to mention the bombs that were set at the RNC and DNC headquarters. Like, the whole timeline doesn't make any sense for the story. So I thought the impeachment was a complete sham. They knew they weren't going to convict him. There was no chance of a conviction. I think Rand Paul called for a vote like a week or two prior, which was like whether it was even constitutional or not. And it was, I think, 55 to 45. So right there, I mean, there's pretty much 45 senators that can't flip-flop their decision there. A couple ended up doing it, but that's another story. They were never going to get 67 votes to convict. So there comes the question, what's the point? Are we just wasting time? So that's another discussion. Right now, we've wasted basically a month of the Biden administration. I mean, I fail to see the point.
Do you think that Trump's kind of rhetoric though had anything to do with inciting some of his supporters to do this?
Well, as you know, I don't know. I mean, some of the news networks seem to know more about like QAnon than I do. But I view QAnon as like, I mean, nothing was going to sway them. They thought they were fighting for Trump. You had Lincoln this is confirmed already. You have Lincoln Project, people from the Lincoln Project in that group. You had guys from Antifa in that group. A lot of these polarizing groups in that crowd. Once you get people riled up, you know what happens. We saw the whole summer what happens. Somebody does something and everybody does. But like I said, full extent of the law, prosecute them. But you can't hold speech unless Donald Trump said go to the Capitol building, break in, and take over the Capitol building. You can't hold them. I mean, that's the First Amendment. If I can take something you say and say you meant something else, now we got a problem. I mean, you could say I love you, and I could be like, no, make something else up. You know what I mean? So you have to take words as what they are.
Yeah, I actually it's like two sides of a coin, but like I have two problems, and it kind of goes with both parties. The first problem I have is that, like you said, the Democrats in the House knew that they couldn't impeach Trump because they didn't have the votes in the Senate, and they still tried to do it. I actually agree with your sentiment on that. The other problem I have is that I feel like on the right, there's been like this inability to accept the results of the election even after the election, and I kind of do think like some of that weight falls on like Donald Trump for not willing to like commit to a peaceful transfer of power earlier on in the election. Like I noticed in 2016 he was calling the election rigged even before it happened. So there is blame on both sides of the aisle. I haven't really followed it as closely as I bet some of you other guys in the call have, but I had a problem with each side, like in what's transpired essentially.
You had thousands of at the very least, what we do know is the Democratic Party officials in Philadelphia, Atlanta, Phoenix, Detroit, Madison, Wisconsin, at the very least, we know they kicked Republican observers out of the tabulation rooms. So there was no oversight of the ballots. Now you're having all these extra ballots coming in, statistical anomalies all over the place to the point mathematicians are saying that this is not possible. So like, yeah, there was serious.
But the one point I have to make with that though is, weren't these cases tried in numerous states and all of them were rejected? No, because I want to say there was over 50 court cases.
Michigan and Wisconsin were.
There was one case heard in Wisconsin that was heard in court, and the GOP won the case. If the rest of them were thrown out on standing.
Okay.
Okay.
So
all right.
in Pennsylvania, they threw a case out on standing post saying you should have. They threw it out on latches saying you should have brought this up prior to the election. But prior to the election, if you brought up, because the standing laws in Pennsylvania are very, very precise. If you were to bring that case up prior to the election, it would have gotten thrown out because you don't have any damages prior to the election. So when you have courts that are just not willing to hear it, and I get it, after 2000 there was a lot of backlash and courts don't want to hear the case, but I don't know. Where do you go to? And I don't think there's enough time, and there are questions with the machines too, but I thought that was a tangent that probably shouldn't have been followed so hard, because that's going to take years to look into.
Do you think Rudy Giuliani was the wrong man for the job?
Yes, because I think it was more of a digital thing. I mean, you could look at the DNI report, which it was foreign interference too. And when you have, it seems like it was more along the lines of tabulations. So how are you going to have a guy who barely uses email run the?
Yes.
And Jenna Ellis is not the right person either. I don't know who is, but I don't know. Even the FBI, right? I didn't see them interview one witness. Hear that they interviewed one witness. Actually, they did. They interviewed a truck driver who testified saying he brought 200,000 ballots from Bethpage, New York, into Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Now, what that many ballots are doing crossing state lines, I don't know. They interviewed him and asked him how he got in contact with a lawyer out of Virginia. They asked him how he got in contact with. They didn't ask him to testify on what he did. And then they also interviewed a postal delivery guy from who testified that he did something, and they tried to get him to like remember what had happened. They're like, this didn't happen or whatever. He wore a wire in the when he was harassed by the FBI. So that's all Project Veritas. You can find that he in the deposition he wore a wire. And then they put out a story, I think, in the Washington Post saying, you know, he recanted his testimony, even though he didn't, and he has audio recording that says he didn't. There's a lot of questions. So yeah, and they didn't look in, like you said. I mean, there's all these court cases that got thrown out, and then the news, and actually you can read about it in Time Magazine. They put an article out last week that to me looked like a confession, except for instead of saying stealing an election, they called it fortifying an election. But it talks about how like the business titans came together with the far left groups and changed laws. And I mean, the second paragraph starts out, or the second part of it starts out, in a way Trump was right. But you do this after, and I mean it's too late. That's the thing. Once he puts his hand on the Bible, that's that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things Trump could have done, but I don't know. I think he was upset after the 6th, where I think all the people around him were isolating him and putting him in like a corner and saying, you're not going to talk. If you talk, we're going to use the 25th Amendment on you. But I think he was also like took a deep heart to where he did feel responsible for what happened to the Capitol building, and he lost contact with people. I don't think he realized that there was it wasn't everybody there.
I'd
Well,
actually
I think,
also make the point, or okay, you can go for it.
I think
My bad.
where his responsibility for the Capitol riots, right, was him telling people to show up on that day. Really, I don't think that's really an impeachable thing. I would disagree with that. I think if he were to be impeached for anything, it would be not abiding by a peaceful transition of power. But that's not really in the Constitution, is it?
Just to build off that too, just to build off that, I think that like Twitter, Facebook, and all the other social media platforms that took Trump off of their platform, I actually think that's wrong, and it should be like written into law at some point that like social media companies should actually be limited in how they're allowed to censor people in the future.
There's a lot of guys they don't censor who are saying far more ridiculous shit.
Honestly,
there are people that say much worse than what Trump said.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, it was overblown with what they're.
Here's the thing. I will say, to tell people to show up on 6th, he didn't think that was going to happen. You know how many rallies he'd done in like all these places? Very peaceful all the time. I mean, people were hot on the 6th, and it came. I think when Mike Pence released that letter right before going into the hearing or whatever, after that Saturday or at the turning point, no, it was in Georgia. He said we will have our day in the Senate, and then he basically said right before, I'm not going to listen to anything, I'm not going to do anything. And really, Trump wasn't asking him to overturn the results. Donald Trump was asking him to send it back to the state legislatures who didn't have the chance to certify the state electors because the governors did it because the state legislatures aren't in session in December. And so the Constitution says the state legislatures choose it. Donald Trump said give it back to the state legislatures in these 6 or 7 states. And there were dueling sets of electors. I mean, it's happened before. But there's statutes and whatever else. But if you go to the Constitution, there's a pretty close to even split on constitutional attorneys that'll say he probably had that power. But and then the Supreme Court didn't hear it. So
what you think, though? What you say? One thing I will say is, can't you admit at least that Trump probably could have handled the peaceful transfer of power a little bit better? Like, you don't think that contributed to the incitement at all?
Well, I mean, I don't think that contributed to what happened in the Capitol building. No, absolutely not. But I do think, I don't know. I'm gonna say no because really he didn't want to start the transition. We know that. And then he did because the lady who runs the transition for his administration was being harassed and threatened, and her family was being threatened, and somebody posted like where her kids go to school online. So you had these, I don't know if you want to call them leftists or anarchists or whatever you want to call them, who are going and threatening the person who's running that. And so Donald Trump says, hey, don't risk your family or whatever. We'll start the transition. He held off on the military part, but and there's other issues that led to that. Likely the hard drive from hell.
That's actually like a big disagreement for me. Is I feel like it's like a norm. That's been set as a precedent like throughout administrations, even if you vastly disagree with them. Right. Biden didn't have access to intelligence briefings for a long period of time until he got those the go ahead from Trump. But I feel like that's actually gonna be worse into the future because now the precedent's set that you don't have to do that. I think that's actually bad.
What had done is just acted like a normal president and had the FBI spy on his opponent. He could have done that.
Hey, I mean, if you're like giving them the intel that they need, I don't really care. I feel like it's fine. But it's like that block off. That block off is what I had a problem with because I know people accused of Obama's administration, they were trying to wiretap Trump during 2016 or
They
something
did.
like that.
Did.
But at the same time, like Trump was still read into national security briefings and such. Like it. Besides that, I feel like it was still a relatively peaceful transfer.
There was. Everybody knew what Biden. I think they even started the confirmation hearings like prior to his inauguration. Maybe not. I don't know. But there was at least talk about that from.
But
Schumer
they did. You should mention though that they did postpone those hearings.
Oh well, I mean that's okay, but like he knew. Look, nothing. It was going back to the status quo. Okay, they were putting all the Obama guys in anyway. It's like everybody knew what was really happening. All you have to do. Donald Trump, even foreign policy, national security wise, pretty transparent. I mean, you know, it was our worldly relations were. Yeah, Biden's are very different, but he was putting in the Obama guys. I mean, Susan Rice is going to probably have position. You got the Secretary of State, John Kerry's coming back. You know, it's business as usual. And I mean, you talk about two political parties. Yes, there are two political parties, but I don't think the two political parties are Democrat and Republican.
I think we're seeing a split in both parties actually, where there's a more moderate wing and a radical wing on both sides that we're kind of seeing like big, just massive rifts in the parties now.
I also think
you're seeing a civil war in the Republican Party for sure.
Between
it hasn't quite
McConnell
happened in
and
the
Trump.
Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Well, McConnell. I mean, Mitch McConnell will not be the majority leader in 2 years.
No.
The Republicans, I believe, will be in the majority in 2 years. I do not believe Mitch will be the guy. I don't think McCarthy will be the guy in the House. But how I view I think like the Bernie crowd and the AOC crowd, I don't think they figured it out yet. But I think you have basically two political parties, and it's a populist, and then there's the global elitism, which is the uniparty in Washington D.C. Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, they all have the same donors.
Yeah.
That's who they're out for. It's K Street lobbyists. It's Wall Street financiers. It's the ruling class, right? The like World Economic Forum and all these international parties, and let's get back into the WHO, who we know lied to us. Silicon Valley, that Davos, right? Your Charles Schwab, Soros. Can I say the S word? Gates. That's the party, and then you have everybody else, and that's the Donald Trump wing. I think in terms of populism, I think populism is the future, and you're seeing it in other countries. Brazil, I think the latest with Captain Bolsonaro and all these guys, but and some are getting beat. Merkel's going to step down, but I think the policies are more likable going forward. It's just the question. I think the only question before us is it going to be a Donald Trump economic nationalism type form of populism, or is it going to be Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders type of populist socialism? I think we're headed for one of the two.
My problem with both of them is they're both fundamentally weak in their implementation. They don't focus on issues that are actually going to help us in the long term. Like some of what Trump did on the international stage, I agree with. Like I actually think as a foreign diplomat, Trump actually advanced a lot of America's interests with his trade policies against China, and then in addition, his unilateral agreements with a lot of Middle Eastern countries and Israel. But like what you saw too is domestic policy, not much changed. I think like Trump tried to pretend to be an economic nationalist that didn't really commit to it much in the sense that not much got done.
Well, hey, that's not a question on Donald Trump, okay?
That's a question of Washington.
These things all got changed. These things all got changed with a couple of executive orders by Joe Biden because they were executive orders by Donald Trump. now we ask the question: why were they not laws? Why were they not implemented in the first 2 years when you had the House and the Senate? But now you can look at Paul Ryan and you can look at Mitch McConnell and ask them why they're not. Okay, so there's three parts really to Donald Trump. It's the economic nationalism, which was the reason for the wall. I mean, yes, it stopped the drugs and it stopped the human trafficking and whatever else, cut that down, and the heavy enforcement. But it's really about limiting the incoming labor to drive wages up. Because who gets hurt more when you're allowing people to pour in over the border? The border towns, our Hispanic and black brothers and sisters down there, right? They're the ones who lose their jobs to these foreign nationals. And now
wages,
and then
here's the argument against that though. Wages essentially cannot be fixed because regardless of if you import foreign labor or not, you're talking about vast levels of automation that are incoming in the next few decades, and you're talking about a minimum wage that's, in my opinion, already too high. Workers should actually really have to barter for their wages.
I don't think you're right. I don't think there should be. First of all, I don't know that there should be a minimum wage. Certainly not a national minimum wage.
No.
Even close. What you need in New York, you don't need in Alabama.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I actually don't think a lot of the jobs that left the country, fundamentally the way the world economy has been set up, they're not coming back. A lot of people will argue that they could come back, but it would change. It would have to take like a vast change in federal wage policy and not just that economic policy as well to actually try and make Americans more competitive and invest in education in the sense that like they should start teaching labor-related jobs earlier in like K through 12, and they should also make massive investments in infrastructure and future stimulus bills instead of like bailing out large companies or giving cash handouts to individuals at low interest rates.
Obvious, but how are you? But at the same time, you can't have if you're going to do that, then you can't have the government telling people they can't work for 10 months.
Oh, I agree, and I think that's on Washington fundamentally. But I feel like no leader I've seen has really put forward the policies because they're all owned by lobbyists on Wall Street, regardless of party. It's like
right. and even with Trump, right? He came in and he said no lobbyists, but all it did was turn his family and the people close to him into lobbyists. So and that he did not foresee coming. I mean, just doesn't matter.
What the fuck did he think they would do? I mean, that's the way it goes.
Well, I mean, yeah, it happened, but it wasn't supposed to. I don't know if I'm going to say supposed. I don't know how big of an effect it had, but he does have friends on Wall Street and all that, and that. Well, Wall Street, how I view it is the economic wing of the Chinese. That's forcing money into China, because what China needs is money. They need cash on hand. They're throwing that right into the military.
Basically, what they need to do is sustain the economic growth in China, because even if their growth slows, China has such a large population that it would be rippled throughout the whole country. So if their economy slows in growth, then like there might be like an overthrow of government, essentially.
Yeah.
See, that's where I'm going to say Donald Trump made a huge mistake. And I knew what he was trying to do, and he was trying to kind of move China towards the West and turn them into like a Western, whatever. You saw that in the trade deal that was signed and got really blown up in January.
You can't do it with a communist government.
China is never going to Westernize. It's not in the fabric. But you could cripple the Chinese Communist Party if you stop the financial capital from moving into China, and you try and move as much labor as you can out of those slave camps they're running in Western China.
But here's the counter argument to that, though, is if those jobs leave China, where are they going? They're not coming here, at least the way we've set up education and infrastructure. They're going to India. They're going
Europe,
to Vietnam.
India.
They're going.
Well, why is our labor force set up the way it is here now? Because there's been the managed decline by the elites in this country to move all the labor jobs away. If you can force is a strong word, because they will move to Western cultures, and you're going to see a decent amount come here. But I mean, what do they say with They said all the truckers will learn to code.
Well,
Yeah, but hang on.
the thing is, though,
what
with
ended up happening
Here's
is
the other
Silicon
thing.
Valley.
with
Here's the
Silicon
thing
Valley
with
just
Trump, though.
imported little Chinese kids to come code.
with Trump saying he's supporting these people like truckers and everyone, right? What does he actually do to help them, their families, and their kids? Not much.
I was gonna say, why is Trump talking about bringing back dead industries like coal?
Betsy
and things
DeVos
like fracking?
deprives those people's children of education.
Bringing back coal and
I-
fracking is not going to get more people jobs because those are dying industries. We should be teaching them how to do new jobs with that have to do with
Exactly.
The only
And
additional
the
point,
crackdown.
the only additional point I want to make here.
You're not going to teach 50-year-olds and do that to them.
The only additional point I want to add here is that the U.S.
Yeah, but a
government
50-year-old isn't
has
going to
set
get
up.
true.
mining coal.
The U.S. government has set up American citizens to fail in the sense that we've made the country anti-competition in the sense that we've raised wages too much. We've stagnated workforce labor.
We've also
And then
deprived our people of education.
It deprived us of education. So it's like at what point is the government going to realize what it's fundamentally failed on and then make corrections to that? Because I don't think truckers learning the code's ever going to work.
Never. Here's the thing. That's not going to happen. I said managed decline earlier. This is what they want for their globalist agenda is a managed decline of America because it needs to prove that nation states can't work. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy into open borders everywhere. I mean, even you see it in Europe. I mean, you see uprisings in all of the countries where they're trying to have their own nation state and not function like the United States, but not in EU format. You see it in Brexit. You see it in Italy. You see it. I mean, it's happening all over the place. They don't get a lot of news coverage, but you know the news networks are all globalist, even Fox, right? So I don't know. I think there's big fights ahead. I'm more excited to see how it all plays out one way or another. I mean, we're around to watch it. So
I really think unless you actually get rid of a lot of the cesspool that is Washington and basically replace them, which won't happen really without a large-scale revolt of the American people, I don't think the system's going to change much.
No, it's not.
No. But what they want you to do in Washington, D.C., here's what they want the American people to do. And Hillary Clinton calls them the deplorables, right? Here's what they want you to do. They want you to shut up, pay your taxes, send your kids to die in the Middle East for defending who knows what, and vote for them and send money to their campaigns. And, you know, they'll give you lip service. Lindsey Graham will give you lip service every day. I think he came out right after the impeachment and said, I called Donald Trump and told him the MAGA movement needs to continue. Thanks, Lindsey Graham. Thank you. I was really waiting for his approval.
Yeah. But I'd say that's a bit of a dire outlook because if you actually, like, America actually does have, like, one of the largest millionaires of any country in the world. I mean, like, there is opportunity in America. It's just, I think our government doesn't really... Our government fails at allocating resources properly to help actual American citizens get there.
I think what you've seen is a neglect of the working class all over the country. It's like
Yeah.
there's been high skilled labor jobs created, but the amount of jobs we've lost in wage in labor that is like skill intensive has been like way outpacing any other decline.
Here's another thing that annoys me about Trump is his blame on that job loss is on immigration. It's not on immigration. It's on corporations.
It's on technology.
It's on big business and big tech. It's not. Immigrants aren't the. They're not the main cause of why we're losing jobs that really help people.
Especially considering they'll work.
That's actually probably one of our biggest disagreements. Is I think like from my libertarian standpoint, I actually think immigration is a net plus due to the fact that like a lot of business owners and people who run startups come from other countries or are first generation immigrants. They start businesses at twice the rate of natural born citizens. So it's like for economic growth, immigration is almost essential, but it's based on what kind of immigration that is. If it's merit-based immigration,
when it's
merit-based. when it's actually trying to improve different factors
Right,
in the
right.
economy.
Right. Who's for that?
I'm for that.
Was it Trump who put forth merit-based immigration?
Well,
Sorry?
yeah, merit-based. I do also think we have a
Well-
bit of a responsibility in the Western Hemisphere to take care of certain people who are seeking asylum from war-torn countries, only in the Western Hemisphere. But I actually think like a lot of the Asian and European countries have way more of a responsibility in like the Eastern Hemisphere. But in the West, I do think we have a little more of an obligation to protect countries around us.
And merit-based immigration is great, but there's no way to really make it happen and make it work
There is.
like
There is.
perfectly. There really
Well,
isn't.
But we could get the efficiency.
We get
rate
people
higher than it
people
is.
in this country from all over the world over boat, plane, everything. Like it's really hard to find and stop that.
Well, here's the thing, and with the southern border and all the people coming over, hey, I understand the Central American countries that have the problems, and if I was there too, I'd want to get out,
Yeah.
and I'd come to the United States, and that's on our politicians for making it so easy. But I think the real thing we need to go in and solve is try and figure out what's going wrong in some of these Central European countries and help turn them around. You're seeing it in Mexico already. Even with the wall, it allowed the new president to come in and crack down on some of the cartels. Mexico's getting better. You see, Colombia is going up.
Colombia is actually doing pretty well.
With the fall of it needed the fall of Venezuela to happen to really allow that to take off. But yeah, those are countries that need fixing so we can stop having El Salvador and all these. So people would stay there because I guarantee these people would go back if it was fine.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing I think is our strategic alliances in the U.S. are screwed up because of how much of diplomatic relations we've established in the Eastern Hemisphere and not focused on in the Western Hemisphere. We could have such a strategic alliance with so many countries, like in South America and Central America and Canada. But I think we failed to realize, especially in like the last 20 or 30 years, that those matter more to us than like being involved in the Middle East or Asia or Africa.
Yeah.
If you essentially like, I think where we set up our alliances has failed.
I agree, and I'm more for with big treaties. Big treaties worry me. Just because it's a lot easier for certain countries to not participate or not hold up their end. I'm bilateral treaties. I'm all for it, and you could take a big treaty and chop them down into individual countries and just kind of I forget the betting term for it.
What we should be doing right now is spurring growth in countries like Argentina and Brazil that have actually seen like steady growth in the West. Because I think when you actually have strategic partnerships near your country, it allows for like a lot more productive cooperation.
It's also faster access to natural resources.
Yeah, but I honestly just think we've misallocated resources by like going to countries like Iraq and Afghanistan. Like it's just been a misallocation of potential. I know we went there specifically for oil, but I don't know. It could have just been that.
but here's the thing. This goes back to politicians don't want it to be productive. There's absolutely what we spend in Afghanistan? $3 trillion in Afghanistan, another $6 trillion in Iraq.
Yeah.
For what?
For Cheney to become a billionaire.
for
Dick Cheney.
Yeah. It's been 20 years. You find any?
For Halliburton. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible.
What do you think about the Paris Climate Accord, though? What about that treaty and Trump pulling out of it and Biden rejoining it?
Well, I think it was a mistake to begin with. Trump pulled out of it. You saw our carbon emissions in this country decrease, and you saw those countries that are still a part of the Paris Climate Accord, their emissions decrease. So who's not? It's another thing like NATO, right? We foot the bill, and we're doing all the work.
Yeah, I actually agree. I don't think like a strategic alliance-ship always works with certain issues. I think like what we should have done, at least domestically, is subsidized like net or like eliminating carbon emissions, and we should have put a tax on carbon. because like when you actually try and solve it in your own country, it goes a lot further because we're never going to curb global emissions
My thing with
around
the
the world
carbon
with
tax,
just America.
my thing with the carbon tax is you get into the issues with these agencies having more control and spying on people and all. We are as people. Look, people look at conservatives and say, oh, they fucking hate the environment, right? No, I mean Republicans love the environment. Okay, we go. They spend how much time outside and all this. Americans in general are green people. Okay, you throw your stuff in the recycling bin, or things get recycled, like I'm saying, and we are progressing towards being green. But to go and say full stop, we're just going to go solar, wind, and sun, or whatever else. To do that, I don't think it works. There's still stuff we can do with nuclear.
Yeah, agreed.
Some
on
of
nuclear.
the coal out in Nevada, and people don't understand. And you're saying about coal, and I agree. Like coal in West Virginia and all that, just do away with it. I know they have ways of purifying it and whatever. Whatever. If it can be profitable and that somebody wants to do it and it's clean, fine. But I do know that the coal out in Nevada is as pure as it comes, and if that's clean, why would we ban this stuff?
Well, so what they actually do with I've actually toured a coal plant here in the Northeast. So when it comes to energy, right? I agree that we should be subsidizing green energy and cutting back subsidies on fossil fuels while still having them in case of emergency. Because the way the power grid in New England actually works is during the summer, it's mostly natural gas, right? And then in the winter, maybe for like state of emergency or like severe winter storms, 1% of our energy is reliant on coal. And what they use is a fluidized gas desulfurizer. So the reason why they call it clean, it's cleaner, it's a lot cleaner than originally. But basically they burn the coal, the steam comes up, powers a fan, and then all that smoke has a ton of sulfur, I think a bit of mercury, and carbon monoxide. So what they added is this device that mixes water and limestone and absorbs a huge amount of the sulfur, which is the biggest problem.
Well, from what I understand, and I don't know too much about the coal, but from what I understand is, like you're talking about, they use the water and whatever else to
and limestone.
Right, but the problem is more on the companies that do it, because the corporate ends of those want to cut corners and use whether they're using a wrong type of something along with the I don't know specifically what it is, but I do know that they're cutting corners and using less expensive stuff, and you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a necessity for it, but I'm saying what the government, where I think Trump's administration failed, was start cutting back on those subsidies, not increasing them, and increase more sustainable energy.
There is one thing in energy I actually think Trump did well on, and that was increasing domestic production of oil in the U.S. And I actually think like that should have been that should have been a sticking point, because now the Biden administration is trying to roll back a lot of the oil production that was domestic. But in reality, the U.S. Needs for oil doesn't change. It's just being imported instead of created.
Now we have to get it from the Russian oligarchs.
Or the Saudis. So it's like, would you rather support a brutal regime that like violates human rights regularly, or would you rather produce it in your own country and create jobs here?
Or we send troops down south, Venezuela.
That's always something that I never understood about.
You think we're gonna take the oil? You think we're gonna take the oil?
We're invested. We're actually invested in it. We're not gonna get any, but we are invested along with the UK and Canada.
Yeah, it's just so many of the policies.
Canada is pissed about the
pipeline.
The pipeline.
Yeah.
Wait, who said that they weren't going to end fracking on the campaign trail? that Joe Biden? I think he said that he wasn't
I
gonna
think
crack.
wait, did he? I think he said he was gonna, and now he isn't, or something like that.
Yeah.
Was that what it was, or
But
did he say
no,
he was?
No. He
That was
said he wasn't
Klobuchar.
going to.
No, I think
Was it Klobuchar?
Kenny's right. I think Kenny's right. Where
He
Biden
said he
was
wasn't going
gonna,
to, and
or
the first
wasn't.
day he did.
Yeah,
Because he's in Pennsylvania and he didn't want to screw up.
Yeah.
yeah. The other thing is like energy production should be largely self-reliant. Like I don't think the U.S. should try and import more than we.
How do we benefit in any way?
We
from not
don't.
doing it
We
domestically?
don't.
When we can, we have large amounts of gas underneath us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tons. Actually,
You guys had the problem up in Mass. You can't. New York when let a pipeline go through there, you had to go through Canada or wherever else to get your natural gas.
big shock.
Yeah, I know New England's grid is actually pretty solid, like Mass and North.
You
It's
guys
like-
are pretty decent.
Yeah, it's
Decent
mostly
prices.
natural gas,
It
and then
could be a lot lower.
we have maybe like 15% nuclear, which is pretty cool.
I actually think that the
but
biggest,
they're old though. They need to be replaced. in my
one of the
opinion.
biggest issues we have with nuclear right now is a lot of the current technology is outdated. So if they updated those power plants, nuclear would actually be a really viable option
Yeah,
for the future.
I think
A lot of
nuclear is
people-
the best.
A lot of people
option
have
we
this like very like cynical view on nuclear, where I actually see it as an opportunity to, with increased
Well,
innovation,
that-
be.
I mean, I will say I don't love nuclear. I like nuclear. If you can do hydroelectric or something like that, or geothermal.
The problem with that though
those
is
two are better, but not
in a
everywhere.
transition, in a transition, nuclear is necessary because the amount of energy that nuclear produces
is
is almost
insane.
unmatched
Like nothing
compared to any other.
compares to
It's
it.
That's what I'm saying.
the most efficient source of energy that the human race has access to.
Nuclear is
Not-
good
not
if you
just-
don't have the resources to do geothermal or hydroelectric. Or
Well, in a
something.
transition,
I'm
what
not
saying
huge
in a
on
transition
hydroelectric, but
in a
geothermal is pretty
transition-
great.
to trying to make green technology like more affordable and like more readily available, nuclear is essential to get you there in the long run. Is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. It's
Yeah.
absolutely crucial.
I think
What I'm
nuclear
just
has
trying to
more
say is that we have
implications
a
of
lot
like
we have a lot of
long-term.
outdated nuclear plants
Yeah,
that
we
need to
do.
be
We should
shut
probably,
down in place.
or our government can reinvest in them if they could spend dollars wisely.
See, we disagreed on stuff. We agreed on stuff.
I'm living
Should
in
we
a
start-
dream world though.
Should we start on topics? So the first topic is Federal Reserve officials expressed concerns over slowing economy. All right, so in Washington, the U.S. economy, this is from Washington. U.S. economy and job growth has slowed since the coronavirus cases surged all across the country in January, and it's heavily dependent on the course of the virus. Minutes of the Federal Reserve's January discussions show officials believed that the public health crisis is still posing considerable threats to the economy. The minutes, released Wednesday, reflect widespread Federal Reserve concern for the central bank's policy of emphasizing ultra-low interest rates to boost the economy and help millions of Americans regain lost jobs. Quote, members agreed that the Federal Reserve was committed to using its full range of tools to support the U.S. economy in this challenging time, according to the minutes, which covered federal discussions, January 26, 27th meeting. The minutes note some improvement in the economy's medium-term outlook as distribution of vaccines ramped up and Congress passed a $900 billion relief measure that provided direct payments to individuals and extended unemployment benefits. At its January meeting, the Fed kept its benchmark interest rate at a record low 0 to 0.25%, and pledged to keep pursuing low interest rate policies until the economic recovery is well underway. The Fed does not meet again until March 16th. Federal Chairman Jerome Powell, however, will appear before Congress next week to deliver the central bank's semi-annual report, a monetary report to Congress. And appearance financial markets will be following closely for any cues of Fed's future moves on interest rates. The Fed has signaled that it does not plan to begin raising rates until after 2023, which I disagree with. I actually read an article that it could be as soon as 2022 if vaccines are widely deployed to more than 70% of the population. In addition to low interest rates, the Fed is buying 80 billion in treasury securities and 40 billion in mortgage-backed securities each month, and analysts expect those purchases to continue for some time. Analysts said the minutes indicate no change from the Fed's emphasis on keeping interest rates low until the economy has recovered. Paul Ashworth, chief economist at Capital Economics, said he believes that the Fed will not start to reduce its monthly bond purchases until next year, and that the first federal rate hike will not come until 2024. Charles Ripley, senior investment strategist at and what does that say? Sorry, Economy Investment Management, said that the main takeaway from the minutes is that the Federal Reserve has an accommodative monetary policy that will remain in place for the foreseeable future. The staff assessed vulnerabilities associated with household and business borrowing as notable, reflecting interest or increased leverage and decreased incomes and revenues in 2020. Let me see what else there is. Powell said that while the early recovery started last year, it has also helped $4 trillion in government support. It has been surprising, and we're still very far from a strong labor market whose benefits are broadly shared. And then Powell has cautioned that inflation, which has been a no-show for the past decade, could accelerate for a time in the coming months as the country opens up. I also agree with this point. I think you're going to see inflation continue to rise. I think it already has been rising for a few months now. But he and many private economists believe that this will only be a temporary rise and not a sign that inflation is getting out of control. I think this has a lot to do with the stimulus bills, including individual payouts. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I think that's a bit of a more optimistic outlook on when interest rates will rise. I think I think they're going to raise interest rates by the end of this year. Because by the time vaccine rollout is deployed, I think Wall Street will want to collect.
It's going to be in 2022 because the economic recovery is not going to happen right after vaccines are mass deployed. I think what's going to happen is we're going to wait for the dust to settle, and in 2022, the Fed's going to feel a lot more comfortable raising interest rates to 1% to 2%.
Well, the economy won't fully recover, but we're going to see a ton of court cases hit courts for evictions, homes, mortgages, all that.
Yeah.
So a lot of assets are just going to get lost. A lot of assets are going to become worthless.
I also think
I think you're going to see a market collapse before any of this happens.
Yeah, that's why I think they're going to raise interest rates before the end of this year.
I don't know. I see. Well, the one point that you made, and you said that you were talking about inflation, and my one thing is that I don't believe some of the numbers that the Federal Reserve puts out. When they say we're at 3% inflation, there is absolutely no chance we are at 3% inflation.
That's facts.
What are they measuring? The Netflix subscription, like something that doesn't raise? So I don't know. I think they're gonna pump the money supply.
Here's where I actually see the crisis starting. Okay, so when the Federal Reserve says that interest rates are 0 to 0.25%, you have to think about it this way. Who's getting the loans that are 0 to 0.25%? It's the banks who then distribute the loans to the rest of the population. And what do we know about private loan rates? They're much higher than public loan rates. So the real crisis is going to come from personal borrowed debt from the banks.
Exactly.
What you're going to see is there's going to be a high default rate after the dust settles, and mandatory watches where you can't evict people right now, and you can't collect on mortgage debt and also personal loan debt until the foreseeable future. It ends in March, but it's going to get extended. So once that starts, you're going to see the start of the crisis, because banks are going to start to recover some of the losses, but at the same time, there's going to be a huge amount default.
Of
The
leverage,
default rate's
there's going to be a
gonna-
huge amount of leveraged assets that become valueless,
So
whether
this
they're personal
crisis-
loans or mortgage loans.
This crisis is going to have very little to do with what the Federal Reserve gave to the banks. It's going to have to do with what the banks gave to private borrowers. In my opinion,
We haven't even begun to talk about state debt too.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The
government
out all these states.
Yeah.
If I mean, you got New York. I think they're what 300 billion.
and we
in
just
debt, or-
we just declared a state of emergency in Texas, so that's going to cost a shit ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be hundreds of billions, but
No, it won't. It'll be tens of billions though. It's
It's
lot.
gonna be-
Texas has a lot
I think
to do.
the incoming economic crisis is going to be worse than the recession in '08 because of
I
what the
think so,
banks
too.
Yeah.
because of what the banks are going to be able to do to private
Wait.
citizens.
Which goes to which is gonna emphasize on a point, and this goes to you guys as libertarians. I think with my stance on libertarianism is that and I was saying, like, I'm not like a huge deregulation guy. I'm a huge deregulation guy, but not on specific things. So what led to the 2008 financial crisis is the deregulation on the banking industry and the lending.
Oh,
Okay, but now-
we've already deregulated the acts they put in place right after that crash too. Dodd-Frank.
Yeah, Dodd Frank,
Fucking Washington.
Everything repeats itself, but what's worse than that is government shutting down private businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it is.
totalitarian won't work here.
No.
So
Absolutely
totalitarian
not.
dictatorship, China model will not work here. I think there are specific groups aiming for the China model here.
Yeah.
And whether they're conditioning people with these ideas floating around to UBIs and whatever else, I think we got a lot of problems coming, and a recession, maybe even a crash, is what's going to start it off. And I'd say, we got maybe 6 months to a year. Let's see how long the Fed can hold it
Yeah,
off.
I think after this summer, I really think it's coming because I think
the way the Fed distributes money is inefficient because the way they dispersed those loans were not to the actual people of the U.S. It was primarily the large corporations that then took those loans and turned a huge profit on them by leveraging debt from private citizens.
technically
That's where you're going to see the crash come from.
the reason why the numbers there are so skewed, I know on the original acts, I don't know about the new ones because I don't think they've been passed yet, but with say with the CARES Act, right? So it was actually split into like two different budgets. One to be dispersed to like private businesses, big business, individuals, and that was actually dispersed evenly. Like the same amount was given across the board in each like section. But then where you see these massive multi-millions going into corporations is the Fed spending money on what they say is keeping the dollar afloat, like buying like mortgage-backed assets and buying like other loan-based assets. So that all goes directly into banks and private corporations at like a much higher level. Even though they're not, some of that money, like most of that money, they can't really use. It's really just for leverage.
I don't know. There's so many problems with monetary policy right now.
But yeah,
I feel
mean,
like
they could have done more.
Buying back mortgage assets is going to do nothing in the long term.
No, it's
stop
not.
the
It's
crash.
not gonna do anything.
And the scale they're doing it on, like the TARP Act that was issued in like I think it was 07 or 08, where they bought back I think it was like $3 trillion of mortgage security assets that were like trash essentially, just to save the economy. Isn't gonna like the rate they're doing it at 80 billion right now a month, I think, is not large
It's
enough
insane.
to actually stop an economic downturn.
No, it's not. There's no fucking way. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. But
You're gonna still end up with millions of people out on the streets after evictions like start to ramp up.
we're already
Hey,
seeing people
camping
on the
industry.
streets. Like in New York, dude. In New York, we're not even supposed to have any evictions, and evictions are shooting through the roof.
Yeah. I don't know, I thought it was a super interesting article because I don't really agree with a lot of what the Fed says either because I feel like it's not really true to what Americans live like on the ground.
No.
Because we get our loans from private banks, not the Fed. So the Fed giving out low interest rate loans does nothing to help actual Americans.
Again, it's not designed to.
That's not.
It's you're gonna have just enough money to get by, maybe. Raise your kids. They'll go serve in the military. You can vote as long as you vote for us, and you'll keep getting your $2,000 check or. That's what they say. You're only worth $600 for 10 months. You couldn't work.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you guys hear that the new stimulus bill is going to include like $1,400 checks this time?
Damn.
Like that's going to save anyone. It's actually
you know what the best stimulus is?
No
a
stimulus. Oh, a job.
A job, yeah, that would be great.
That is true, isn't it? But I mean, like what you've seen in the economy is like Americans don't want to work for the jobs that are out there. Like I feel like our workforce participation rate is so low right now that it's not like the same levels.
Yes, but look how many percentage of people are unemployed compared to last year.
Yeah,
and those are people who do want to work.
I'd honestly argue that headline unemployment, though, is a bullshit number. Like, even when it was at 11%, I guarantee it was way higher than 11%. It's just a number that politicians use to convince voters to keep them in office or vote them the incumbent out, essentially. Headline unemployment has nothing to do, really, with how the workforce is really doing, at least in my opinion.
It's just like, really, GDP, it doesn't reflect the economy. It reflects the largest corporations, and that's that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Pretty much.
All right, that's it for my topic. It got pretty dark right there, actually.
Yeah. All right. So Biden just had a town hall in where was it? Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So basically, he spoke about his main thing was how COVID's doing, and he promised 600 million vaccines by the end of July, which I think that's pretty cool.
600 million?
Yeah, so like each vaccine 2 shots. So the entire American population should have access to a vaccine by the end of July. So it's nice having that time frame. I think that was a good thing. One thing that really kind of worries me is he's still sticking by this creating a $15 per hour federal minimum wage. I don't think it makes sense. It really makes no economic sense. I don't think he appointed smart people in his economic cabinet. There's no way they're telling him this would work. Like I mean maybe they are. Maybe they are.
It might be.
There are studies that show both that it can lead to job loss, and there are studies that show in states with higher minimum wage it doesn't necessarily have a big impact on job loss.
So why aren't they leaving it to the states?
Exactly, it should be left to the states because a $12 minimum wage is necessary in Massachusetts, but its neighbor to the north, New Hampshire, you don't need a $12 minimum wage. Yeah. The cost of living is so much lower. So just leave it to the states.
It's honestly, it's a policy that's only going to hurt.
You're talking about doubling the wages.
Yeah, in some states, yeah.
Like that's extreme.
It's crazy.
Oh,
it's absolutely insane.
The other thing is you're talking about communities that have already been hit by large amounts of work loss to be hit even further. The communities that can actually afford like a $15 or $12 minimum wage are ones that are thriving urban communities. Generally tech hubs, more high-skilled workers. But the thing is
that are already paying that anyways too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're already paying that.
When you think about it, you're only going to further cripple communities that have been left behind with like the changing economy.
But you're talking about politicians who talk and won't follow through. I think even Bernie Sanders said he would vote against a $15 minimum wage amid COVID. So he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people that won't. Manchin from West Virginia certainly won't. That has about a 0% chance of passing.
Yeah.
But the other things, and we can go and talk about the rest of the town hall. But you mentioned vaccines. He said last night that there was no vaccine when he took office.
Yeah, that's not true. Actually,
I posted a picture on Twitter that was a picture of him getting the vaccine before he took office. just saying.
This is the thing, though.
He went back and forth.
With the way politicians are, I'm gonna give them a pass on that because, like, dude, politicians
just
shit
talk
that comes
shit.
out of their
Like
mouth.
half the shit they say. Yeah.
Most of what a politician says, I actually just discard into the trash bin.
So
Essentially right away.
But I'm just saying, don't think we're gonna have 600 million vaccines by whatever June or July or whatever he said.
Well, actually,
He
I
said
think
we were on
that
par
will happen because so the Trump administration secured 400 million doses from Pfizer and Biotech, or from Pfizer and Moderna, right? And then they also secured contracts for another 500 million doses of vaccinations from companies whose vaccines haven't been approved yet. So Johnson & Johnson, Novavax,
that's the single shot,
and
right?
AstraZeneca. Well, we don't know yet because they haven't been approved yet, but hopefully. But basically,
Johnson's going to be one shot if it gets approved.
Yeah,
Ooh.
basically those.
Wait, can I ask you, Kenny? What's the effective or the efficiency rate on that? Do you know? Like, what's the effective?
Well,
do you know? Is it in the 90s?
I don't really want to get.
I'm gonna take what I get. I'm gonna take what I can get first.
Okay,
I'm not for the. I'm for it if you're at risk. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's just where I am. But I mean, right now I have a 99.997% chance of surviving this thing.
Yeah.
Priority.
I mean, I just.
What's an extra 95%? Am I?
Yeah, but you just don't want to.
I don't want to spread it, really.
Like, I want to be able to see whoever I want and not have to worry about like wearing a mask around them.
That's my worry that they're going to move towards. I mean, you're already seeing they're giving out the cards, right? Vaccinated.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think eventually you're going to have the digital COVID passport and just more ways of centralized control.
And the microchip.
And we don't
the microchip.
Oh,
yeah,
the fucking microchip.
I think the fucking chips coming with the vaccine is a whack. But not to mention, I mean, you just look into what's in the vaccines. I mean, they got like hormones in them and all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you.
All these new era proteins.
Yeah.
Bro, they have egg protein in them.
Yeah.
That's like what people take when they go to the gym.
No, I mean, is I still say, I mean, Fauci, I think, and Biden had the 30-page report from the CDC or whatever, and they were saying, it said like more research needs to be done into how it's going to affect kids or whatever, and then like a day later, I think Fauci puts out like the key to herd immunity is the vaccination of children. I'm like, well, your department just put out a 30 or 80-page thing yesterday that was like further research needs to be done. So maybe one day he got it all figured out. But,
yeah.
I don't know.
And then,
again, I think they're do nothing politicians and nothing's ever going to happen. But
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that matters is efficient spending, make the government smaller.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
Just
no one can do it though. Why can't anyone
efficiently.
fucking do it?
Well,
no one can fucking do
because
it.
nobody in there wants to do it.
No,
Yeah,
people
nobody
hate
in there wants to do it.
People hate on Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, but dude, like if you saw how efficient the government
Bro,
was,
they were awesome. They made the government so small. It was great. Bush actually ran on the same precedent that Clinton ran on, which is keeping the government small.
The other thing is every president has failures, and
then Cheney happened.
NAFTA was a failure, but at the same time, if you look at it, like the amount we were able to like cut in government spending and then also run a surplus under Clinton, it was like very impressive.
Yeah.
I thought. I actually think he was probably the best president we've had
Most efficient government we've had.
in the modern era,
Yeah.
honestly.
In economic policy, I'd
In
say.
economic policy, yeah.
Economic,
He was
yeah,
still really
economically.
shit foreign policy.
Economically.
Yeah.
Well, you had identity politics just taking over the left.
Probably like, what's it been now? It's been a while now. It's identity politics. The problem I have
Late
with identity
2000s
politics
probably.
fundamentally is that it doesn't actually solve any problems that Americans face as a cohesive.
No, it's a
unit.
distraction.
It
It's
is.
only intended to be a
I've
distraction.
noticed it as a distraction as well. Not really like trying to bring Americans together to solve common problems. It's really just.
It's easier to govern a divided country.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a very valid point.
And then, yeah, those are my main takeaways from his town hall thing. And then I ran a couple fact checks up against some of his claims. So, like, the so many millions of people working in poverty right now, it is a little outdated because I imagine it's hard to really get out there and measure during COVID. So as of like the beginning of 2020, about 2.3 million people were in poverty in the U.S. So I think because of COVID, that's shooting up. But it's not so many millions yet. Like is I think the main takeaway there. And when they say Trump spent $8 trillion in deficit spending, they've actually spent 4.7 trillion. And another 3.4 hasn't actually been spent yet, but it's probably going to be spent, and it's probably going to be increased.
Well, they probably didn't account for the first 3 years the money was taking out of circulation.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, I haven't actually looked into that.
250 billion a quarter or something like that. I mean, it was probably. I don't know. The one thing that really got me about the town hall. Did you catch the China part? And he's asked about the Uyghurs.
I didn't actually watch the town hall. I'm pretty much just reading a summary of it.
So he was asked about the Uyghurs out in Western China and
with the camps.
Right, where women are getting gang raped and all that.
Yeah, people are being tortured.
And so he's asked about that, and he kind of gets stuck. He kind of gets like scared, or that's how his reaction seemed to me. And he was kind of trying to dodge, and then he was like, I talked to Xi Jinping, and I'm an American president, so I told him, to be respected as an American president, I have to project American values and say what you're doing is wrong. I'm like, well, it's just wrong. Like I don't know. And he said like,
no society where that should be
it is just fucking wrong.
He said the reason like Xi Jinping's doing it is because he wants a united China, and that's what the totalitarian dictatorship is all about. And he's running his treatment of Hong Kong and what they're doing in Taiwan and the Uyghurs, and he's like, we just have to understand they have different cultural norms. And I'm like, genocide's a cultural norm, and that's just okay.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I mean, if you actually look back, Biden actually he has spent quite a bit of time with Xi Jinping in terms of
they came up
when he was vice president. Yeah. So
also for two down there.
So I mean, yeah, he's definitely gonna pussyfoot around when people ask him tough questions about China. I really.
But you have too.
I don't know what his office is gonna do with China. Honestly, I think they're definitely gonna increase trade. I just hope they don't sign any treaties that are just really bad.
They don't do what the EU What the EU?
What was that?
I hope they don't sign what the EU signed.
Yeah.
Right. They made China their number one trading partner.
Yeah. That was
Man, this is scary stuff.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Well, most of Europe already has China as their number one trading partner. Same with like most of Middle East and Asia.
Yeah, and I mean America did until.
Wait, what they're doing is they're conditioning all of us in the United States and other countries to be addicted to cheaper products,
Yeah.
right? So we're not willing to pay $30 for a T-shirt anymore, well, because they're all made in China, and we've been conditioned pretty much our whole lifetimes to shop for cheaper and cheaper.
Well, I would argue that it's not really conditioning. It's more just like that's just.
You can say
It's really just comes down to spending dollars.
Well, it's spending dollars and it's a free market. Except for it's a lot easier to, have. Hey, we if we had slave camps, we could also make like T-shirts.
Yeah, that's
5
true.
cents.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out a way to compete with that, or say that's wrong. We're not going to trade with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we could easily stop the flow of capital into China.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be super easy, honestly.
But that's another story.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I don't think it would.
funding
It's
themselves.
hard to find a replacement of that size that they can provide, right?
Well, it would have to split up between the West, and prices would rise.
I think Pan-Pacific investment in Pan-Pacific, maybe like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, but that's going to take so much time for them to really get to those kind of levels.
I agree, and then also I think what we can do here, and it's way too easy for Chinese companies to list here, and a lot of the Chinese companies are just set up as, whether you want to say Ponzi scheme or not, but it's to flow money to the CCP, and it's way too easy for them to list here.
Well, it's actually the interesting part of China is like the way they've set up their economy is essentially state-sponsored capitalism, where it's like it's like the way it's essentially where they do have corporations, but they're all injected by funds from the CCP.
Yeah, but when the guys get too big, they disappear.
Jack Ma disappeared, man. Fucking crazy.
Have they found Jack Ma?
Right?
Is he back
He's
yet?
back now.
I haven't actually
But remember a year ago or something, he was forced to retire.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, or he resigned. Sure.
He resigned.
Yeah, he resigned. That's believable, right?
He resigned and is a fan of the ruling government.
Yeah. No. And the other guy, he fell off like a building in Paris or something. One of the other companies. I don't know. It's a totalitarian dictatorship to run everything in China, and I do think eventually the people of China will obtain their freedom in some way.
I really hope so. I think what happened in Hong Kong.
I think it's going to end.
I think our economy in 2008 was a house of cards. I think the Chinese economy is a house of sand, and I think once it goes, it's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, actually. But I mean, like the biggest problem with China is the way that their government operates. I don't have any issues with like Chinese.
But it's
citizens.
effective.
It is effective. It
is effective
as long as capital is flowing there, which it will, because everybody wants a cheaper. It's all about corporate gains.
The two spheres that the Chinese have actually like capitalized on were information, like trying to disrupt the Western's flow of information and actually attack Western societies with influx of like communist rhetoric. And then the second part that they successfully beat the West on was the economic policies they set up in-house domestically in China.
Yeah, their economic policies.
Because
I'd argue a third vertical of possibly their biological weapons program might be something worth
the other
too.
Well, I don't know, because that's mutual assured destruction at that point. The one thing that they can't do with the one thing you have to avoid with the United States is a kinetic conflict, because the one thing America can always do is beat your ass. Yeah, I think it's called The Art of War. It was written by two Chinese.
The Art of War is about war and business, but there's a book. It's called like Unrestricted Warfare.
Yes,
written by a Chinese general. and they talk about the three types of war: financial, information, kinetic.
Ah.
And
You
they
want to
say,
avoid
like
kinetic.
because the United States can kick your ass, but they are very good at information and financial manipulation.
Yep.
Yeah,
I would say
they
the
are.
heavy investors in our news agencies.
I'd say America does well on the information side because of the amount of software that's produced here, but it doesn't really match
Oh,
China.
they steal all our technology too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, they do.
and our companies want to go produce things over there, so and then they steal the patents and whatever else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just
And
based
then
on
all
local.
those jobs that just got lost get blamed on the immigrants instead of the
Like
corporation that just.
But
the
but what
global, it's the
politicians?
Davos. Like you said, it's like the party of Davos. It's the global financial elitists in World Economic Forum. They want low labor rates, and if it's China that's going to get it for them, they're going to take
That's
it.
where
They
they're
don't
gonna
care where that
go.
investment
Yeah.
goes. It's a good point.
I mean that's what it is. And but all these guys are, your news agencies and the Washington D.C. Everybody's intertwined with them because they're making money. They're making money. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, China's a tricky spot.
I mean, I think they're way weaker than they put on. I mean, you could probably find their bank's assets. I think they said like there was like 40 or 50 trillion in holdings and like financial assets. Their central banks or whatever in like a couple of years. Where I don't know how stable.
What's that based
They
on?
weren't stable.
Yeah.
No,
What's that?
I
What are their
I think
assets based on?
I
Like
think I
what?
think it has to be inflated like the Soviets were doing, and Reagan called their bluff.
Because they have to be trading some kind of leverage against that as well. Like you can't just have that kind of buildup without any collateral.
I actually think the big point is that like assets aren't essentially owned in China. You can own them for a period, but all property in China is owned by the government. So the
Jesus.
actual value of the assets are all what the CCP
Or
deems them
what
to
they
be.
say, yeah.
So it's an unstable predicament because if the government ever collapsed or if people ever revolted against them, you'd see a huge deflux in the value of the Chinese market.
Well, I mean, and that's where I think and when they move on Taiwan like they did day one of the Biden administration, and I think honestly, I think that was a trial balloon to just see how he was going to react.
It was.
See if
I
yeah, for
agree.
sure. If it was me, I have friends in the Navy, Naval Academy, whatever. We talk about it, and it's like just send a strike group into the Taiwan Strait and just tell them, hey, none of that.
Yeah, I
Don't.
actually I've talked in our friend group, and I feel like Iran and Turkey are both very strategic threats to American diplomacy, but it's hands down China that poses the
Well,
largest
I
threat.
hear this out, and I've been saying this for a couple months, maybe since February or March. The next Axis power: China, Iran, Turkey.
Could be Russia in there too. Actually, you'd be surprised. They're not
You
really.
you
They're
you
not
could
pro
see it.
West.
I would say
They also made a move right the first day of Biden's administration, moving into Latvia and wherever.
There's some
I
sneaky,
don't.
Yeah.
Would
slimy
Russia?
that was
bastards.
fucked.
Would Russia openly side? Because the thing is, if that becomes an open alliance, you already have U.S. and Saudi on the same side.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's
Plus,
not gonna be
plus
an alliance
Europe or most of
between
Europe.
Turkey, Iran, and China because Turkey
Well,
hates
So
China.
Saudi and the
Iran
U.S. like who's gonna take both? Like Russia. Russia has resources, but I don't think they'd want to be involved in that.
Did you guys catch? I think so. Biden took office like a couple minutes before noon. I think it was like 12:03 or 12:04. China like put the sanctions on the guys that worked in the Trump administration that were anti-China. I think they got Navarro, Bannon, a couple other guys, and they John Bolton was in there.
Okay.
And everybody has seen Navarro. He's up there. He's like, how the hell did Bolton end up on the list? I never seen him do anything in against China. And Bannon comes in and says, either they didn't like the book and they wanted their money back, or China called up, or Russia called up China and said, hey, put Bolton on there. So maybe you got something there. Maybe there's a strategic alliance there. Though I don't know. I think you're going to see Russia start to phase out as Putin looks like he's going to step down. He's trying to figure out his logistics of how he's going to do it and not be arrested when he steps down. But he'll get laws changed or whatever he's got to do.
Yeah.
Or he'll put some puppet in and that'll be that.
He's a smart fucking guy.
He's a rich fucking guy.
That too.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think your point is strong. Where, like, dude, the biggest fucking, like, what would I say? The biggest thorn in China's side throughout the Trump administration was Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon brought up China constantly
until he quit. Until he quit or got fired, depending on how.
But I mean, a lot of people don't like Bannon, and I agree. Some of his rhetoric on unrelated trade policy goes off hinge at some points. But
I think he's a little radical.
I'm a big fan.
Bannon's economic policy was very pro-America in a lot of senses that I actually agreed with what he was trying to do. At least.
But it's more along the lines of he was the one. He came and turned the campaign around because he said just double down on this, because that's what Americans want is you got to get rid of the identity politics are a loser. I mean, sure, they worked out in this election, but this election, I mean, there's a lot of things.
It's still happening. I mean, still.
But that's where Bannon says it, and I was watching him the other day, and he said, as long as they're going with the identity politics, this is why he says he never defended, like, when people call, like, Trump a racist or him a racist. He said if they're calling us a racist, that's because we're winning. If they're gonna try and manipulate people to think that it's and Bannon, I think, was the guy behind the Islam, the Muslim ban. I mean,
that's something that I'm not a huge fan of. Like, Bannon, for everything I like about Bannon.
If you look into that, they actually met with all those countries prior to taking office to see what they wanted, because they said Trump laid out the plan. Here's how we're going to take down radical Islamic terrorism, and all those countries were behind it too. They want it because it stains them. And Trump said, well, here's we're going to stop immigration and the UK, they took a while to come along to that too, so that they had the spikes in.
Yeah, but here's the issue then. Who's really getting fucked over though? Because, like, it's not that the terrorists will enter a country illegally anyways. It's mostly like refugees who are getting fucked over by that.
Right. But people, the terrorists weren't able to move, at least into the United States, easily.
Yeah, but that was because those countries over there were fighting them.
Well, I think the reason why
you also trapped them like a rat in Syria. I mean,
but I'm saying it was like
pretty easy to take down once they were stuck, and all those countries helped out.
I think the Patriot Act is probably the most powerful thing in finding and stopping terrorist threats in the country.
Yeah, I think.
No, that's actually bullshit. I hate the Patriot Act with the fuck.
Yeah, I hate the Patriot
Act. Second
too.
Coming. There's going to be a Patriot Act 2.0 coming very shortly.
I don't agree with it, but it's what points
it hasn't
out.
Stopped any terrorism. Essentially.
Yeah, but
I think they stopped 3 terrorist attacks.
The ridiculousness of this all is the U.S. allowed for a lot of those terrorist groups in Syria and Iraq, for example, to take power by getting involved in their politics, and then it ended up being the people of Syria and Iraq who
armed them. We fund them.
Yeah, because we hope they take control and then give us stuff.
Yeah, we used to fund the Syrian rebels who are literally allied with Turkey. They're a more moderate form of ISIS, and then it was Assad and the Kurds and the Assyrians who ended up defeating them, not the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many issues with our foreign.
Now we're going back into Syria, so there we go.
We're not gonna.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm honestly not looking forward to Biden's foreign policy. I think that's going to be one of his most trash departments.
Well,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, his foreign policy isn't looking
Secretary
too
of
strong.
State?
Someone who's really into, I'm a journalism major, in case you didn't already know. So like, as someone who's really into like media and news, I just noticed today a big event was that Rush Limbaugh passed away. So I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Rush Limbaugh personally, but I know he's been like very influential with kind of like the talk radio and broadcast culture and world in the United States in the past like 30 years. He's been on air since like the 80s and 90s. And he's kind of also was one of the most influential conservative voices in modern American politics. So he's best known for his show, The Rush Limbaugh Show, which was aired on AM and FM radio stations. He also hosted a national television show during the 90s. And he's been inducted in several in the National Radio Hall of Fame and the National Association of Broadcasters. But of course, there's a lot of people who love him. Of course, there's 15 million actually who used to listen to him every week. But then, of course, there's a lot of people who also aren't big fans of him because he's known for several controversial viewpoints on race, LGBT, consent. He had some interesting things to say about that, and he denied climate change, and he supported the U.S. interventions in the Middle East. So, he's kind of a Reagan-type conservative. So, I was just wondering what you guys' thoughts on him or similar hosts, because he kind of paved the way for people like Alex Jones to get popular, and on like having a radio talk show. So,
I didn't really watch too much Rush Limbaugh. It's not my cup of tea, so I don't. It's really. I mean, I don't feel either two ways about it.
yeah, I mean, more like, what do you think about the influence of stuff like talk radio and radio shows and like TV shows, and now because we have the internet, obviously podcasts and satellite radio. What do you think about their influence on our politics and our political culture?
Oh, I mean, well, maybe. Would you say he was maybe the start of like opinion shows becoming news? Is that because that I'm a huge opponent of. I think it was more conglomerate.
He was a big contributor.
I think it was more conglomerate media.
There was no talk radio on before Rush Limbaugh came on the scene. He was in sports. Back then it was disc jockeys and sports on the radio, but there was an opinion, and it really he paved the way for conservative radio. I mean, because it was very early on, like Democrats took over basically the other forms of opinion shows. So they pretty much took over the television. But conservative
and a lot of people say
was something
NPR
that Democrats couldn't really break into, right? They couldn't break into the radio, and everybody's got to listen on in the car, right?
Yeah.
And I was sad today when it came through. But I mean, we've known it was going to happen for some time.
Was he ill?
Yeah, he had cancer
since.
I think Trump gave him the Medal of Freedom at the State of the Union in 2020. But
I think I respect his legacy in like the broadcast world. Like I said, some of the stuff he did say, I think sometimes was not always great with blurring the lines between opinion and actual news and facts. And you see that now with people like Alex Jones or Steven Crowder, and even obviously there's like plenty people on the left too, like Barry Weiss and stuff, who like just blend their opinion with, and obviously like BuzzFeed type people.
Well, what like Alex Jones does, as I view it, is he's a lot of, all right, these are three completely unrelated dots, and I'm just gonna connect them all. And sometimes it pans out, sometimes it's so far off. But hey, people like this, both left and right, occasionally are right. And I think you have to have. you have to have a
I
forum
despise
for
Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity. I think they're fucking cancer to the people of America.
I think. Look, I think they both have legacies, and I think they're both hammers on either side
That's
as far
true.
as.
Yeah, I mean,
To the detriment of
look,
the IQ of all Americans.
yeah, to the detriment
look,
of.
they talk a lot and say nothing.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
But you tune in. It's an opinion show. If you wanna tune in, and you're gonna get that. But they're hammers. I mean,
They have a
no
lot
other
of
way
sway. Yeah.
but they're not dumb.
No. They're like Ivy League educated people. They're like extremely intelligent people. Well,
They just seem dumb.
They're intelligent people, and they put on a facade that they know will work, that they know people want to hear, when it's not necessarily like actual proper journalism.
Well,
Trust me,
That's not what they
Avi.
are. Their opinion.
They're part of
And
the
they're
elite.
competing with
Okay?
each
They
other.
know more than us. They know more than us because they are part of the elite class. Just remember that.
I personally think.
And they compete with each other. So
Yeah.
Sean Hannity goes one way. Rachel Maddow's got to go the other. That's who they're competing against.
And it's disgusting.
Rachel
It's-
Maddow for 4 years was just bash Trump for an hour a night. Hannity was okay. I got to launch a defense at Trump for.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about actual issues. I mean,
No.
No,
it's
that's
the identity
exactly.
stuff.
I mean, if we can actually thank Rush Limbaugh for anything, I think it's decentralized news for the fact that I actually enjoy independent news way more than
exactly.
I was gonna
Well,
say.
that was
large
the
corporate news now.
for the right. I think the 2020 election. I don't know if you've seen Fox News's ratings, but they're not doing too hot.
Huh.
No, because they had big Biden posters on behind them, right?
I don't know about that. when people turned it off was when they called Arizona,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
like 5 seconds in, and people what? So then everybody turned on Newsmax and Newsmax and OAN. I mean, look, I think you should go to original sources.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't like
I
that.
Independent
I think
sources.
I agree with that because I think
Your
like
mic.
I've spoke on this before, but I think one of the problems like with like major media is that it's becoming so like there's only 5 major media companies. It's becoming so much just like kind of narratives and owned by big corporations and multimillionaires. And I think these kind of like independent radio shows and independent because obviously radio and TV are also kind of dying. So internet news and like podcast news and like social media type news is becoming a thing. I think these independent sources are what are going to provide the quickest and most effective and accurate news without like unbiased sources. I just think that what people have to be careful of is the people who are actually giving them like accurate news as opposed to people who are just kind of giving them like propaganda basically
Alternative facts.
Alternative facts, exactly. I think that, but I do think that like the type of show Rush had is like something that I do like to see because the more people with kind of these independent opinions, as crazy as they can be, it kind of like it keeps like people's options to where they get their news from more like honest, genuine. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should look into Rush Limbaugh's like history and legacy a little more.
because here's the thing, people like Jon Stewart, for example, some of the stuff people have gotten more news from his show than like CNN, NBC, or Fox News. Like people
Well, the thing is, news isn't to me. News isn't really supposed to be.
Bill Maher.
or
Bill
Maher.
News isn't meant to be digested on a 24/7 basis.
No, it's
so
not.
like the way the huge corporations act is like there's a breaking news story every few hours, when in reality news should be digested at your leisure,
Like
where it's like
30
if you have
minutes beginning of the
30
day.
minutes a day.
Also, the problem is nationalizing every issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right? You see, that's where the centralized control comes from.
Yeah.
If you were able to go back and not if the George Floyd thing was awful. Should it have been a national story? Yes, but we should have waited for more facts to come out first.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think right now you're having people be able, whether it's a 6-second video in Kenosha, Wisconsin, or something that state legislature is doing here. I don't think these are national things that it should be reacted to on such like, oh, this is breaking news.
It's something for that state to fix. Yeah. I see
and with the whole BLM thing, and I don't want to get too much into it, but with the whole BLM thing, you saw like the push for the federal government to do something about it, right? And they wanted the legislature, the federal legislature, to create policing guidelines. And well, hey, the mayor of Philadelphia, Jim Kenney, can go put a ban on chokeholds today if he wanted to. Everything does not need to go to the federal level.
Agreed.
And that's where people.
I'd argue that the federal level is where everything gets ruined. The federal level is where things start to go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Things are way more effective on the state.
The state level is where things get done. Yeah.
Or even local municipalities. Like the thing is, people overestimate. People place so much importance on the president and the federal government that they forget that the actual effectiveness is usually within the smaller local governments. Like those people you're voting for are actually who are going to represent your real needs.
When I meet young people our age who say who look down on local politics and want to go right into the federal government, I'm like, you have no concept of the way this country operates. Like you should not be a politician.
Hey, if you want to get into foreign policy and that kind of stuff, you need to go to the federal government.
Yeah, that's fair.
But if you want to get into jobs and domestic issues, that the place to solve it is your community.
Yeah, exactly. And interacting with the people around you.
I think if anything's going to happen, in terms of a split of, not that I don't think any states will ever secede, but a split, and you're seeing Florida is being huge resistant, Texas being huge resistance to, and there's going to be other states. I think we're more likely to go toward back, and I don't think it's a good thing, but I think we're more likely to go back towards an Articles of Confederation type thing where each state's pretty much independently governed. I don't know that it'd be the worst thing. I think we could probably make it work.
I think the one problem with that though would be you're gonna have some states that are the most advanced places in the world and some that are third world countries.
Yeah.
Right. You're gonna have California it could be an independent nation right now.
Yeah.
Not right now under COVID, but
I think so.
But Kansas would be totally fucked.
So Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama.
The emphasis should be at this point on decentralizing the government in a lot of aspects and making sure that the government's or the federal government is kind of limited.
I think social issues you can leave to the states.
100%.
And here's the thing, right? If I don't like a social issue in Pennsylvania, I can move to Florida.
Yeah.
You can also, to me, you could leave a lot of economic issues to the state too. You do have the ability with the federal government to do cash injections where you see fit, but they're so unable to come to any meaningful or effective conclusions that at this point you'd probably be better off leaving a higher percentage of tax revenue to the state. Anyway.
It's if you need if you need this in cash injection by this state, and you ask the federal government for it, it'll go to 20 different places and you'll get it 6 months behind the date you needed it.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, the federal government's so inept.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I think with that, we're going to move on to our final topic of discussion, which is our advice. So this one was a good one. I like this one for today. We do this.
By the way, Kenny, we do these every episode. Yeah. We read a piece of Reddit advice and give our opinion.
Yeah, it's
we
from
give
a
our
Reddit
advice.
Page called
So a Reddit user posts on the page asking for advice. We read it and then give the best advice we can, essentially. All right. So how to stop being a boy and become a man. This is what the user's title was. I'm still a young teenager, but I'm fed up acting immaturely and being so short-sighted. I'm working on improving myself actively and how I live my life. The thing is, I'm moving out when I'm 16, and I'd like to essentially be a functional adult by then. I think this kid's getting a bit ahead of himself.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go to therapy to work on some personal issues, and I'm also reevaluating how I treat people in my life. This is one quote my French teacher told me that has always stuck with me. Only you can decide when you become a better man. I live by those words. What advice do you have? A few things I'm going to do are: one, apologize to my parents and brother for the way I've treated them. Two, make peace with someone I know who I've had issues with. Basically, he was my bully, and I became more popular, so I kind of started bullying him back. It was a complex situation. I'm going to hit him up and make peace with him. Three, start working out and eating healthier. Four, cut back on substance use. Five, start working harder in class. Six, stop swearing so much. Seven, stop doing things for attention, like making edgy jokes and saying offensive things. Eight, going to therapy to work on my mental health issues. And nine, learning how to cook. What are your advice to this teenager? Apparently wants to move out at 16, but
Yeah, wait, how is he moving out at 16?
That's probably
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
I think this kid's getting ahead of himself.
If
but,
you're trying
He's
to
an
improve,
ambitious one.
yeah. If you're trying to focus on school and yourself, there's no way you're gonna afford to live on your own. Like there's no way you can do both of those things when you're 16 years old. That's like, I mean, it's possible, but you're gonna be working yourself to death. Your teens are not gonna be enjoyable.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I like this kid if he was like about 10 years older.
Yeah.
I think a big thing with our generation is we look at, and I'm talking about our generation. He's a lot lower, but with our generation, we're looking at like the millennials who are kind of coddled their whole childhood, and our generation is. I mean, we've been told like the worst things like ever. Like we're screwed, and never gonna accumulate wealth and all that kind of stuff. I don't think our generation, we can't wait like millennials did until 30 to like grow up.
No.
And like we can't take 10 years to have fun. I think we're not going to have a country. Two, we're never going to own anything, and you really have to strap down right after college. And if you go into the workforce, you can't really leave it. But so I don't think he has a choice that he has to grow into a man, but he's a little young, and 16, that's where you should be focused on yourself, and you can grow up as a man while still like living with your parents for sure.
Yeah.
And you should
I mean,
be
go to the gym. Allow your voice to get a little deeper. Go to the gym.
yeah.
Eat healthy. Just learn things. You need to learn things to go out in the world.
You need to know what you value as well. Yeah, when you're 16, you need to understand your core values.
Some of his points are actually good. I think he should start working harder in class and stop swearing so much. Like if you are trying to mature, I've noticed it, especially when you talk to like elders, even your peers who are older than you or like a generation older than you. When you treat them with respect, it actually makes you look a lot better as a person. So
Makes
like
a
that's
huge difference.
It does make a huge difference. So like if you want people to
surround yourself with people you want to be like.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
you say what the your closest 5 people are. You're going to be a combination of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Choose wisely.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a great point as well. I always thought too, like people are always like, oh, I have so many friends, 20, 30 friends. If you have like, if you can count your good friends,
you're lucky.
If you can count your good friends on like one hand, you have a ton of friends. Like your good friends. I'm talking about people that you really care about.
You're elite.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like that's a good goal as well. Like people who actually care about your future.
Yeah, hey, I lost like over 400 like Instagram followers in like the last year.
I've actually lost some too.
I actively remove people I don't want seeing what's going on in my life.
Well, I mean, I just people are like, you probably don't like it. I couldn't care less. I mean, if they don't want to see my content, then I don't care. I mean,
yeah, now that I have this, I'm trying to grow it.
They weren't on my top lists anyways.
Dude, this has always been such a sticking point. This has always been a sticking point for me too. If you don't like someone so much that you're willing to like end your friendship with them over like their political stances it's actually just a sign of more of yourself than the other person. Like, you are an unaccepting human being that you don't want.
Immature. I think the word is
want in your life
immature.
anyway. Yeah.
I can understand if they're DMing you and harassing you or
absolutely.
whatever.
Still, I still
Yeah.
keep those people on, but like when they're like,
I
"Oh, I
think
don't
it's
want to communicate
ridiculous.
with you anymore," it's like, all
But
right.
I think it's ridiculous. People, and people who also only have people that follow them who agree with them. Like, then who the fuck is your activism trying to like?
Well, I've been limited.
Get that?
I've been limited to people who agree with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody else unfollowed.
See,
I doubt everyone.
that.
There's a
come on. There's gotta be a few like
You have to
us.
say something. Yeah, for me to unfollow you, you have to say something really fucking insensitive.
Honestly, some of the people I respect most are the ones who disagree with what I say, but like, and then have a conversation with me after and like try and like talk it out.
The thing
It's
is,
like,
if you're gonna disagree, you
respect
should be able to have a conversation about why.
Back it up. Yep.
Yeah.
And those are the people.
No,
even if
I
I
had a
vehemently
couple
disagree with
people.
them, I'll be
I had
friends
a
with
couple people when school started, and we came back, and he came up to me and like, Kenny, I want to talk, or Kenny, how are you? And I'm like, I noticed you unfollowed me over the summer, and they were like, yeah, I just, I don't want to see like politics coming up, and I'm like, all right, I respect that, like we're still friends, like, all right, great, but, I that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the same time though, like, yeah, if they don't want politics, that's one thing I can understand. But if they're like so stuck in like an echo chamber that they just can't tolerate what you post, that's another story to me. Anyway.
Well, we're also being force-fed echo chambers too. Like your Twitters are probably different than mine. We're forced to our extremes.
Yeah.
On Twitter, that's what the algorithm's set to do. It's set to divide people, and we got to figure out how to look. At the end of the day, I think I'm a good person. I think most people are. Your views are your views, but if you're gonna not be someone's friend, and there's a couple people, I guess, but you'd have to, like you said, have to be like really fucked up to like be like, I don't want to be a friend anymore.
Yeah. And you don't want those people around anyway. It's better. You're better off without them.
Well, like you said, you have a couple close friends, and that's really all you care about. Like
honestly,
everybody else, think you kind of care about. But
I feel like that's a point in life for anyone. If you have a few really good friends, it's all you really need in life. Is like a few people who really care about you. They don't even have, like, if you come from a broken home, even it's like as long as you have a core friend group that really cares about what goes on in your life, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, I think we went a little off topic there. I think it's time to conclude.
Yep.
So this has been episode 23. Kenny, you want to restate the title of your podcast one more time and where we can listen to it?
Gen Z Patriots podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, Spotify.
Okay, great.
And some of the other ones too.
Yeah.
Used to be ubiquitous, but I haven't posted a podcast in a while. But you can go on Instagram to Gen Z Patriots Pod.
Okay.
And I put content up there.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully you keep going with it. If not, hopefully you find something new. You've been a really good guest, actually, and
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you for
coming on.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That was Straight No Chaser, episode 23. Remember to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram, straightnochaser.ent. Tune in for next week.